Hi, it's J.Krug with J.Krug and Associates. I'm here today with Andrea Herran from Focus HR.
Good morning, good afternoon.
Tell us a bit about yourself and your company.
Well, I started Focus HR about 12 years ago because I saw a need in small business to have some support, but I also recognize they don't need full-time support. And I have a true belief that if you start creating the right foundation when it's small, it's easily expandable and can grow with a company, and they can start off in the right way. And obviously from an HR point of view, what that means is, the legalities, how do we bring on people, what do we do with them once they're working for us, and how do we transition away from them, whether they leave voluntary or involuntary, what does that look like? And making sure that owners actually enjoy having people work for them. A lot of times, I hear frustrations about having employees just makes it so much more difficult. I liked it better when it was just me. And I want to bring that back again and bring that joy back, even with having employees, working with and through their people. And as I say, I want to uncomplicate the people side of business.
What's some of the more common frustrations you hear from business owners with respect to employees? I know there's a lot, everyone says I have HR issues or HR is a headache or anything. What do you see and what's out there for small businesses?
You see different things. Sometimes, there's frustrations with changes in the laws and how does that affect me. But a lot of times it's how to get that teamwork, what, in the HR world we call employee relations, which is how do we get everybody to work together as a team, to take pride in their work and to actually do their best every day. And what does it take to get to that point? So a lot of that is not just about programs and things like that, but it's also building up the leadership in the owner or those people that directly manage the people. Because there's an old saying, people don't leave companies, they leave leaders. So it's creating that leadership and how to work with people, so they can get along, they enjoy their work, and they're doing their best every day to advance the company.
What's your definition of small business? Everyone has their different definition between small, mid-market. What's a typical client size for your firm?
I mostly handle companies that have between 2 to 100 employees. The typical for me is usually between 20 and 70 employees, which I think technically is called a micro business, so it's even smaller than small. But I just call it a small business. And my typical clients is where the original founder is still working in the business.
When do you typically get called in? When do they, under what circumstances they say, hey, I need help, and what are you going to do for them?
You know what, this varies. Everybody's a little bit different, but if I had to boil it down, I would say it's two things. One is maybe they've gone through let's just call it a sticky situation with maybe one employee or a group of employees, and they want to make sure that doesn't happen again. So what do they need to do to ensure that they're handling things properly? And the other is they see themselves in a growth mode, and they're looking to set some foundations because they know that they're going to be running into things that could affect them in the growth of their business. They feel like they're not scalable on that side of it. So they want to make sure that they're doing the right thing, and they're not always sure what that is because they know that what's been working for them when they had fewer people may not work for them as they get larger, and they want some guidance.
How can a business owner be sure that his communication is getting through to this team, which is key? Is there any way that you know that they're hearing the message?
Well, there's several ways. You can do the old-fashioned route of doing a survey and seeing if people are understanding your mission. But I think the real way to take a look at it is based on are people acting and behaving and following through based on what it is that you're looking for. Now, if not, that could actually be a couple different reasons. It could be that it wasn't communicated clearly, which is not always the case. Where I usually find is people want to receive messages in the way that they understand it. We're all individuals, and so you have to maybe repeat the message several different ways in order for it to for people to understand it. And I know I'm sounding really vague here, but for example, what I personally teach people is that you need to understand how people learn, how they process information, whether slowly or quickly, and what motivates them, and then adjust your message to the way they need to understand it. Which is not always easy, and it's a little bit of art and science to it, but there is a way to do that, to reach, all of your employees in a way that they will understand.
You mentioned problematic employee or employees. How do you deal? I mean, there's a bunch of different problems or problematic. How do you deal with a problematic or chronic issue employee?
Well, first of all, you got to understand where they're coming from, and people can be problematic for different reasons. Is it a good person who's all of a sudden, was it a great employee who's all of a sudden become problematic? What caused that change? Or is it somebody that was a bad fit? What was it? But overall, when you have somebody that's not quite working the way you want them to, it's about having a discussion. And no, it's not an easy discussion, but you need to have it anyway. And tell them what your expectations are, and then ask them how they're going to meet the expectation. Now, you notice I'm saying ask them. Our tendency as managers or as leaders or as owners is to want to tell people what they have to do. This is what you're going to do to meet my expectation, which is fine, but the employee's not going to feel a buy-in. They're not going to feel that they're in control of it. They're going to feel like more orders are being given to them, so they're less likely to follow it. But if you talk to them and say, what are you going to do to meet these expectations that we have, and they come up with a plan. They're not going to come up with it in 2 minutes. It may take a couple days or a couple tries, so you need some patience. They will come back with a plan and you agree to it. They're more likely to follow through on it because it was their idea. It creates that accountability that everybody is looking for. So we have to make sure that we actually give them the chance to be accountable and not accidentally take that away by telling them what they're going to do.
Interesting. Common complaint I hear from a lot of business owners today is they can't find good employees. Is there any a silver bullet to hiring good people or finding people?
Silver bullet, no, but there's definitely things that you can do to get there. And I find when people say that they can't find good employees is sometimes they don't actually understand. They go into the recruiting process with, I'll know it when I see it. I'll know that good employee when I see it. And yes and no. I like to put a little bit more behind that, because to me that just sounds like leaving it too much to chance. So what you really need to do is just take a step back and say, what skills do I need somebody to have? What are the 3 or 4 indispensable skills that I need? For example, they have to be, have a pleasant phone manner. They have to know Excel. They have to understand electrical engineering. Whatever, those 3 or 4 things that you must have. Everything else is nice to have. But you can't focus just on skills. You have to take a look at personality, attitude, what they come in with. While skills can be taught, you can teach somebody to use Excel, for example. You can't teach somebody to be pleasant. They either are or they aren't. Or sometimes they are. So if we keep that in mind, and I actually think looking at behavior and attitude should take up 75% of the interview time. And skills just is a minor part of it, because that can be taught. And by focusing on which behaviors we want to see. So for example, if your company has values, we want people who will take care of our clients, growth mindset, and are respectful. Ask questions around those values so you can make sure that they will fit in. Okay? And if you focus on that, more likely you're going to find somebody who is going to be a good employee. Because you also understand what it is that you're looking for. If you go into it going, well, I'll know it when I see it, not very concrete, and it's very subjective, you know. And how do you get the rest of your team to support you in that? Whereas if you've got a list of things, you're not the only one doing the recruiting. You can have your team help you out as well.
Interesting. What kind of help do you provide for your clients? And do you sit in on interviews? Do you help them recruit?
I like to teach recruiting. So what I mean by that is I do have a process that we go through, that I take people through, you know, starting with, you know, what's the job, what do you need? Then we help devise questions. So I prefer to teach people how to do it because it's a lifelong skill. It's a skill that you're always going to need. And if you always outsource it to somebody else, you don't learn it, you know, yourself. So you need to understand, because even if you outsource part of it, there's going to come a point in time where you've got to interview people yourself. You can't outsource it 100%. So you need to learn that skill. And actually, the hardest part about recruiting is listening. Is because in order to have a proper interview, and this is part of what I teach, is you should only be talking 20% of the time, and the candidate should be speaking 80% of the time. And while they're speaking, you're listening. You're not thinking of your next question. You're not thinking about what appointment or meeting or email just popped up. You know, you're really paying attention to them, because you can learn so much more from people that way.
So in my experience, and I'm probably one of my worst skills is HR and interviewing. How do you avoid, or if there is a way, where you hire someone, they're the perfect candidate, they interview great, everything's perfect, and when they start the job, it's like a completely different person shows up, you know, for the job than the one that you interviewed and hired. And sometimes just the opposite, people didn't interview very well, or you didn't think was very good, and you hired them anyhow for whatever reason, and they end up being great.
A superstar, yeah. And that happens. Well, first thing I tell people is listen to your gut. You know, so if your gut is telling you that something is not quite right, don't dismiss it. It just means your brain hasn't figured it out yet. You know, you'll eventually get there, but you got to give yourself that opportunity. And yes, there's a lot of interview training that people can go through so they can present themselves well. You know, there's a saying, you know, slow to hire, quick to fire. And it's not to be cruel, but if somebody is not a match and they can't do the job, you're actually doing both of yourselves a favor by not carrying it out for too long. So what I mean by that is, if you realize and you've set up like milestones on what they should learn after the first week, the second week, you know, a couple days, depending on the position, what they should know at certain points in time in their initial training with you, they have a roadmap of where they should be, you have a roadmap of where they should be, and you can have discussion points when things aren't working out. And if it's not, you have to be willing to sit down with them and have a discussion saying, you know what, I think this is just a bad fit. Because what happens is that you're getting frustrated because they're not doing what you thought that they had promised during the interview. And they're probably also feeling the frustration and putting pressure on themselves to meet those expectations, and for whatever reason they're unable to. So make it easy for both of you, because they don't want to quit, you know, because they want to keep trying. But if it's not going to work, it's not going to work. Just recognize that. You know, you can't be everything to everybody. You know, as a small business, you don't have that luxury. So give them the opportunity to find a job that they're good at if it's not with you.
What's your feeling on performance reviews? Necessary, unnecessary? You know, should employees review themselves? Did you review them? Should you do both?
I am not a fan of doing a sit-down discussion with employees once a year. You know, the traditional performance reviews. Not a fan. I know I surprise people when I say that. It's, so much happens in a year. You know, and if you're really waiting only a year to talk to people about how things are going, you're going to lose people. Or they're going to be too far down the wrong path to course correct. Or they're going to feel you're not interested, that you're, you know, you just see them as another warm body in the workplace. What I prefer is something that I just call a check-in, which is ideally every month, you know, but if that's not feasible, you know, every 2 months, you sit down and talk to people and have a very, like a career discussion. What's working? What's not working? What do you need from me to succeed? People are always afraid to ask that question because they're afraid that people are going to ask for the moon. Like, oh, they're only going to ask for raises. And it's like, no, actually I've seen more benign things, like, can I have a second monitor because it would really help me working? Or can I get, would you mind if I brought in one of those things to help lift up my monitor higher so I can stand at my desk? You know, they're looking for practical things. They may actually, you know, what do you need from me to succeed? You know what, we have this process that we do this way, and it would really be faster and easier this way. We get the same result. And it's like, never thought of that. You know, let them, you know, come to you with solutions and just say, great, what are you going to focus on? What's your big goal or focus on until we meet again in a month or in 2 months? More steady, ongoing discussions is what people want and what they need. You know, they want that check-in. They want to know that they are doing the right things and that you're there listening to them. And I say listening to them because you're asking the question and then they're talking. And it can even be the same questions every single time you meet because you're always going to get different answers. You know, so it's not like you have to create a new set of questions every month. You know, no, use the same ones every single time because the answers will change.
What are some of the common complaints you hear from owners about their employees?
They're not as interested in the business succeeding as I am. You know, they waste my money. They just want, they don't give.
What's the most common complaint you hear from employees about owners?
They just want, they don't give. You know, so it's two sides of the same coin. You know, so sometimes we forget to both sides to talk about the what's in it for me. You know, as owners, if you're looking for something from your employees, talk to them about what it is to their benefit to do that, not just yours. Because you're right, they are not going to look at your business as you do. Because if they did, they would be an entrepreneur doing something else. They wouldn't be working for you.
How would business owners know if they're handling the people side of their business correctly or not handling it correctly?
Some indicators could be if, how's your turnover? Do people stay or are they leaving? And if they leave, why are they leaving? You know, is it on to a better job, better pay? Sometimes you can compete, sometimes you can't. You know, so you have to be honest with what you can do. Sometimes you're just not sure. You know, if you've got that nagging feeling that something is just not right. A service that I provide is what I call a people process analysis, which is just basically a fancy way of saying HR audit. And it's just because nobody likes the word audit, because it has its own connotations to it. And what that is I come in, or my team comes in, and we look through everything that you're doing that's related to your employees. From the legalities, the recruitment, to how do you work with them when they're with you. You know, we've got a lot of questions that we go through. We talk about culture. We want to talk to a few of your employees to see what it is. And we can take a look and give you either the reassurance that you're doing great, you know, there's nothing you need to worry about, just keep doing what you're doing. Or, you know, there's a few things that you're missing, you know, this is what you need to do. Or you're doing good, but if you really want to get to the next level, here are some suggestions.
Yeah, which leads me to my last question, which I had in there, is the buzzword compliance. So when you do an audit, compliance seems to be a big issue with everybody. Some people don't even know the things they're supposed to be complying with.
Yes.
So what does your audit turn up usually with respect to compliance?
Compliance, the biggest thing that I find, the biggest compliance misstep that I find is I-9 forms. The I-9 form is the form that you need to have all employees fill out, showing that they're legally able to work in the United States. This has been in effect since 1986, I believe. And what people do, it's a 2-page form. Some people don't do them at all because they don't realize that they have to do it. And others will get the employee to fill out page 1 and they totally forget about page 2, which is what the employer has to fill out. And the unfortunate thing is that, first of all, workplace audits are increasing, especially if you're in a industry where ICE, which is a Department of Homeland Security, deems you to be more susceptible to having prone to having illegal immigrants. You know, construction, restaurants, just to name a few, landscaping, you know, just to name a few. So, and the thing is that they can come in, they can ask for the I-9 forms, You can give it to them, and it'll literally take them 15 minutes to go through 20 I-9 forms and rack up the fines. You know, you missed a spot here, you missed a spot there, that's 150 there, 150 there, per form. You don't have them, it can cost you up to $5,000 per form if you don't have it at all. So that's per employee. And let's say you just have 10 employees. That's $50,000 right there. Now, most people I know would rather spend their $50,000 a different way.
Exactly. So how would the business owner get a hold of you if they wanted to learn more or figure out how to do business with you?
My website has a lot of information on it, which I think is the easiest way, which is www.focushr.biz, or they can email me at andrea@focushr.biz, or better yet, just give me a call.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.